Hollywood has spent decades painting a picture of the Old West, where women were nothing more than helpless damsels in distress, perpetually waiting for a white-hatted cowboy to ride in and save them. But the dusty ledgers of actual history tell a far more jagged story. The frontier was home to cold-blooded killers, cunning thieves, and sharp-shooting women that your school textbooks intentionally left out. Some met their end in chaotic street shootouts, while others died in horrific, lonely conditions that the movies refuse to mention. These are 10 legendary women of the West who will fundamentally change everything you thought you knew about the American frontier. Before we dive into these dangerous lives, remember to subscribe and leave a comment. If you want to see the raw facts, the court records, the coroner's reports, and the grisly details Hollywood sanitized, be sure to check the pinned comment. Number 1. Belle Starr, the Bandit Queen. You've heard the names Jesse James and Billy the Kid, but the territory of Oklahoma had its own brand of terror in Belle Starr. Born Myra Mabel Shirley into a respectable Missouri family, the Civil War tore her world apart and pushed her into the arms of the most wanted outlaws in America. She married into the notorious Younger and Reed gangs, eventually running a massive horse and cattle theft operation in Indian Territory. In February 1889, just 2 days before her 41st birthday, the lawless life caught up with her. Someone waited in the shadows of a lonely road and put a bullet in her back. The crime remains one of the West's greatest cold cases. The prime suspects? Her own son, with whom she had a violent relationship, and a neighbor she was feuding with over land. To this day, no one knows who finally silenced the Bandit Queen, but her legend was so potent that even the men who killed her seemed afraid of her ghost. Number 2. Calamity Jane, the Scout's Descent. Martha Jane Canary didn't have the luxury of a childhood. Orphaned as a young girl, she had to navigate the brutal reality of the West by dressing as a man and taking jobs most men couldn't survive. She worked as a scout for the U.S. Army and carried mail for the Pony Express, proving her grit in a world that didn't want her. But the frontier was relentless, and Martha eventually turned to alcohol to numb the pain, often resorting to prostitution just to keep a roof over her head. Fame arrived through her flamboyant performances in Wild West shows, where she would demonstrate her marksmanship even while severely intoxicated. Her legendary friendship with Wild Bill Hickok fueled 1,000 rumors, though the truth of their bond died with them. By 1903, decades of heavy drinking and untreated pneumonia finally broke her. They found her in a squalid room, barely conscious. In a final, perhaps cruel irony, her friends buried her right next to Wild Bill, a parting joke that ensured her name would be linked to his forever. Number 3. Pearl Hart, the Desert Bandit. In 1899, Pearl Hart did something no woman in the Old West had dared. She held up a stagecoach. Desperate for money to visit her dying mother in Canada, Pearl cut her hair, donned men's clothing, and robbed a passenger coach at gunpoint in the Arizona desert, netting $431. It was a fortune at the time, but her escape was far from cinematic. She and her partner lacked any real survival skills. They wandered in circles for 2 days until the police found them huddled under a bush, nearly dead of thirst. Her trial was a national media circus, with the public torn between viewing her as a desperate daughter or a dangerous criminal. After her release from prison, Pearl achieved the ultimate outlaw goal. She vanished. She lived for decades as a quiet cook under an alias, dying in 1955 at the age of 84. She took the secrets of her wild youth to the grave, a life far more complex than any script could capture. Number 4. Big Nose Kate, the doctor's savior. This Hungarian immigrant, born Mary Catherine Haroni, wasn't just another girl in the rough saloons of Texas. She was arguably the smartest person in the room. Famous for her long-term, volatile relationship with Doc Holliday, Kate was the only person Doc truly trusted. When the tuberculous dentist was captured and facing a lynch mob, Kate didn't wait for a lawyer. She set the local jail on fire to create a distraction and broke him out herself. While many of her contemporaries died young and violent, Kate was a survivor. She fought, drank, and ran her own business empires across the West, outliving almost every legendary gunslinger of the era. She died in 1940 at the age of 89 in an Arizona pioneer home. Though she ended her days broke and forgotten, she remained a testament to the fact that sometimes the most dangerous weapon on the frontier was a woman with nothing left to lose. Number 5. Cattle Kate, the Baron's target. Ellen Watson arrived in Wyoming in 1886 with a simple dream: to own her own land and raise her own cattle. In an era where powerful cattle barons controlled every blade of grass, an independent woman doing well for herself was seen as a threat. The barons launched a smear campaign, labeling her Cattle Kate and accusing her of cattle rustling and running a brothel. The truth was far more mundane. She simply accepted calves as payment for services at her ranch. But the powerful elite didn't care about the truth. In July 1889, a group of influential ranchers dragged Ellen and her partner to a remote canyon and lynched them without a trial. She was only 28. In the aftermath, witnesses mysteriously disappeared and no one was ever convicted. Her story is a grim reminder that in the West, the law was often just whatever the men with the most money said it was.
Number 6. Annie Oakley, the Little Sure Shot. Born Phoebe Ann Mosey in 1860, Annie Oakley didn't shoot for fame. She shot to survive. By age 8, she was hunting game to feed her impoverished family. Her aim was so supernatural that by 15, she was out shooting the best professional marksman in the country. This caught the eye of Buffalo Bill, who made her the star of his Wild West show for 17 years. Annie was a global phenomenon, performing for kings and queens across Europe. She once famously shot the ash off a cigarette held by the German Kaiser. Despite her deadly skill, her personal life was one of quiet devotion. She remained married to Frank Butler for 50 years. When a train accident in 1922 left her partially paralyzed, she still refused to quit. She died in 1926, and her husband was so heartbroken he stopped eating, following her into death just 18 days later. Number 8. Etta Place, the Vanishing Outlaw. Etta Place is the ultimate mystery of the American West. She rode side by side with Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, participating in high-stakes bank robberies from the United States to Argentina and Bolivia. She was a master of disguise and a crack shot, but her origin story is a blank page. Some say she was a refined school teacher. Others believe she was a high-end madam. After the Wild Bunch gang began to crumble, Etta simply walked into the mist. In 1909, she vanished from all legal records. There was no arrest, no grave, and no death certificate. Decades later, rumors swirled of an old woman in Oklahoma who knew too much about the Bolivian shootouts, but she took her true identity to the grave in 1966. She remains the ghost of the frontier. Number 9. Mary Fields, Stagecoach Mary. Born into slavery in Tennessee, Mary Fields found her freedom after the Civil War and headed for the big skies of Montana. She became the first black woman to carry mail for the U.S. Postal Service, a job that required her to drive a stagecoach through territory crawling with bandits and wolves. Mary was a force of nature.
Standing 6 feet tall and weighing over 200 pounds, she was known for smoking thick cigars, carrying a 10-gauge shotgun, and never losing a fight. The locals in Cascade, Montana loved her so much that the town would shut down every year to celebrate her birthday. She broke every social rule of the 19th century, proving that on the frontier, your character was measured by your grit, not your gender or the color of your skin. Number 10. Poker Alice, the English Ace. Alice Ivers came from a refined English background, but she found her true calling in the smoke-filled gambling halls of Deadwood. Known as Poker Alice, she was a mathematical genius who could calculate odds faster than a modern computer. She sat at the highest stakes tables in the West with a revolver strapped to her hip to ensure the game stayed honest. Alice was more than just a player. She was an entrepreneur who ran her own successful brothels and saloons. She survived 3 husbands, multiple shootouts, and several economic crashes. Alice lived long enough to see the frontier transition into the modern world, dying in 1930 at the age of 79. She proved that in the Old West, the best way for a woman to gain power was to hold the best hand and the biggest gun. The West wasn't just won by men with dusty boots and silver stars. It was forged by women who were just as cold, just as clever, and just as dangerous as the outlaws they rode with. These 10 stories represent a side of history that was buried because it didn't fit the neat, clean narrative Hollywood wanted to sell. Which of these women surprised you the most? Do you think Cattle Kate was truly innocent, or was she playing a dangerous game? Let us know in the comments below. And if you're hungry for more raw, unsanitized history, check out that pinned comment. The frontier is full of secrets, and we're just getting started.